Do you remember what the 5 types of laws are? The laws keep growing. This lesson today deals with the merchant laws. That's what I'm going to post it as. Uh, you can see my notes for the handouts. You'll notice there's merchant laws version 3.1. There was a 1.1, a 1.2. Then now came a 3.1. I just noted to her that they tend to change over time as at as added to over the years. The Sardis fairs can add to them. Merchants do get together, and we'll discuss that later. And the laws are added to. The idea behind this series has to do with I'm doing 2 sets of lessons. One deals with merchant laws, with the legal side of being an advocate and a merchant magistrate, and the other side deals with basic scribe. So those 2 sets of videos that I'm dealing with these days. Mm, okay, here we go. They're not focused, so we'll let them catch up. Let's see if B remembers this. There are 5 types of laws. Here she goes. She found the notes: initiate, merchant law, warrior law, city laws, and we've got a caste code that we go by, which must be examined whenever doing law. And that comes in handy. For instance, city law may require that all people in the city carry weapons in order to defend the city, and yet merchant caste codes say physician caste codes say that physicians do not carry weapons. So if a physician refuses to, then you have to look at his caste codes and realize there's a reason for that, rather than hopefully city laws don't interfere with caste codes. Rules are standardized, enforced by other cities, even against their own citizens. All laws are used to preserve the power of the ruling class and control behavior of those covered to establish the status quo, so to speak. Sorry about the cut and paste on this, but I can't feed it to our all-in-one deal. Generally accepted Gorean behavior, which includes some caste codes that are adopted by the Koreans of other castes as well as other customs, such as veil on free women, concepts of both honor and respect are shown to others. So there are laws that are generally accepted, but they're not in the laws directly. So it's kind of a sixth category, but they're not laws. And the Code of the Warriors, let me close that out. Sorry. In the Code of the Warriors, there's a saying, be strong and do well. The swords of others will set your limits. Within the circle of each man's sword, each man is an ubar. Steel is the coinage of the war, says the codes. With it he purchases what pleases him, marauders of gore. That's another example of gore, generally accepted code, Gorian law, rather. Now, let's get an example, specific examples of merchant laws that we need to deal with. If you're in a dispute in a sale of a slave girl so the color of her girl's hair, which might be changed by a inscripient merchant, how would he be defrauding buyer? Excuse me. How would a defrauded buyer file a claim and seek justice? Note to self: change pussy hair, change the color of their head. It's a dead giveaway. They can change the hair color, but they by their owner's order. But if they're to be sold, the true color must be disclosed. So it can be done, but it has to be told. For understanding what a merchant magistrate is, we first have to learn the caste of merchants. Although all merchant magistrates do not belong to merchants, the merchants created the position overseas, and they are the overseers or merchant magistrate of any caste. Now, this varies by city. In some, it has to be a merchant. The head of the merchants once argued with me about it. In my city, the guy is a scribe and had to be a man. Caste codes, members of the caste of warriors will make every effort to make a profit through fair and honest training, applying their skill. Merchants are among the wealthiest people on coordinate castes would have the most wealth. All this is in the jurisdiction of each city, territory, trading post, and the head merchant of a city or trading post is responsible for establishment of retail shops or promotion of fair trade under merchant laws. He guides shop owners in fomenting fair and mutual beneficial trades within a city, introduces trade all across Gore, and oddly, many cities do not have an odd merchant. Have a merchant. Now I'm going to pass to her the notes of GLA that met, which is not GLA, but the Gorian Merchants Association. So she sees that how they get together and discuss. And that way she can see that the merchants get together and discuss shop. This is from the GMA meeting. Given a meeting that happened yesterday among traders and merchants that essentially, and that allows her to GMA. Trick runs the meeting, easy to get a hold of if you want to be a head merchant. Is usually the head of caste and usually has a seat on the council, but not always a vote. Remember, they're low caste, invited for input, but do not run the city officially. A lot of these notes are my notes. Not all of them are from that other set. Chief Merchant's deputy is the merchant diplomat traveling extensively across Gore, representing the city products and global trade. He's the chief contact for people wishing to trade with the city or seeking information on product availability, specifications, product times. He equally represents all suppliers of his city. So there could be two positions. So there could be two positions, the merchant diplomat and the chief merchant. Again, it depends on the city. Some cities have it, some cities don't, as always. But there is something called a merchant diplomat. He should work closely with the ambassador concerning what goods are offered in trade, often signs trade agreements. When I'm the ambassador, I make damn sure to get a hold of the person that's in charge of that because I want to know exactly what's available, who does what in my city, so I know what's being traded. He's usually the he is usually the record keeper of the intercity transactions, often a member of the liaison with the trade association or co-op the city joins, like the STA or the GMA. The STA is more for the Tahari. STA deals more in salt. The GMA deals with most products. The merchant will establish an individual business with personal borrowed funds buying product, performing a service to sell for profit. Sales of any sort, which, yeah, merchants are usually independent shop owners, could be slavers, bankers, manufacturers that make products for sale, commonly found in the city, are slavers, bakers, seam, and art dealers, although art dealers are not as much. Merchant law is more than a set of law of sales, however, it also regulates product and content. For those of you studying this today, you can run this, come back, of course, and pick up. This is going to be a long one, and just come back and pick it up later. Don't have to watch the whole thing in law. Merchant law provides the rules by where certification pedigree is produced, the registering of breeds, lineage information for cattle, domestic animals, as well as slaves. In fact, merchant law was begun after the slave wars in which fraud was rampant in Gore. I gave her a chart of weights and measures that was established last year at the Sardis fairs. They're starting to deal with standardized weights and measures across Gore. That's a moving target. There's a lot of discussion about how that's going to be handled in Gore, since there's several coinages and the way that trade is being handled seems to be varying across Gore than it was 10 years ago. In Gore, a play is difficult to actually measure against the standard, so generally we agree that is not our standard, that is, merchant magistrate comes in if there's a dispute. For instance, magistrate will rule if he actually measures against the standard foot. I did see a tool recently shows what they conceptualize as the foot. You could actually put it up against things. Merchant magistrate. I hate it when they put what's playing into my chat, but that's okay. Correct. It can be done, but it has to be get the claims in writing. Merchant law is silent on private transactions. Only auctions require a brand. The seller, however, is always responsible for how he represents the merchandise, even in a private sale. If claims are made, my advice is get the claims in writing. You don't want to do a he said, she said thing where they're sitting there arguing over who said what. It's better to go ahead and get it in writing, and then you can get a save trouble. Part two, how the merchant law is applied. We've been discussing the formation and maintenance of merchant laws. Now we're going to say how it's applied. Most commonly applied properties in Gore are slaves. Most of the law deals with their own. I've got to make a run. Okay, as you can see from the handout, 3.1, Merchant Law 3.1, most of the law is designed to protect the buyer from false claims on the legal side. And now the obligatory quote. One does not wish to buy a girl thinking she's auburn, rare, much prized hair color on Gore, for example, and then discover later she was, say, blonde. Always make sure they dye the public hair, pubic hair, as well as the body hair. Discovering such a fraud, needless to say, the law provides redress. Slavers will take pains to check out new catches or acquisition. They ascertain the natural color of the hair. One of the items one expects to find, along with fingerprints and measurements, on a carefully prepared slave papers, which is why some of the slave papers have so much crap in them, because of that quote. And I know slavers hate dealing with that. Original much of the merchant law began in southern Gore, where there's widespread capture of slaves who were sold, but often did not live up to the claims made by them, such as training, expertise, physical capacities, most often about the strength of the Kajera. Now the quote, I mentioned the slave wars earlier. A part about training. Many are not trained, at least not much. So the part about training is important. Slavers these days. Quote in Vagabonds of Gore, she's referring to a series of wars loosely referred to as the slave wars, which occurred among various cities in the middle latitudes of Gore. Here's where the quotes come from that I've been referencing but haven't been giving. Over a period of generations, although a large-scale slave was involved in these wars, was doubtlessly a sufficient condition for them. Other considerations are also involved, such as levying a tribute, the control of trade routes. As the slave wars grew, much of the merchant laws pertaining to slaves. And there's what I've been referencing, but didn't give you the quotes to. It started in the southern cities. It came during the slave wars where men were cheating each other right and left. So they had to have a series of laws. Who writes the merchant laws? The senior merchants under the authority of the initiates. It can only be changed by a majority vote of the merchants who public at a lawfully public announced subsequent meeting. Going to the merchant fairs and Sardis fairs are extremely important. That's why they've been discussing a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to give her that quote. Even though under the direction and initiatives at the Sardis Fair, merchant law is voted on by the majority of merchants attending a particular fair, most of these laws can be changed by merchants attending the next fair, though to enhance stability. That's usually not the case. The rules provide topics that are concentrated in law, which may be changed depending on the usage. Measurement, for example, the Gorian foot, which is standard measure for length, does not change from fair to fair. Official foot is always persistent at the fair. In a disagreement over size, weight, distance decided by comparison, again, the standard is Sardis. Such standards are held by the head of caste of merchants in each city. Mm. And then we have the weight in the stone. The weight in the stone, incidentally, are standardized throughout the Gorian cities by merchant law. The only common body law exists among cities. The official stone, actually a solid metal cinder, is kept, by the way, near the Sardis Fair 4 times a year on a given day. Each of the 4 is brought forth with scales that merchants from where they may test. There's no robot in our realm to check our weight or measure, but the merchant magistrate would role play doing it. Most of us have come into contact with merchant law when buying and selling any merchandise or service. Anything from salt to slaves, auctions, and individual sales are a large part of merchant law, for example. Now, salt is tricky. Salt's tricky. If you're going to buy or sell it, you need to go to the STA meetings or he's going to raise hell. Now, in most Gorian cities, it's illegal to offer an unbranded woman in public sales. It's presumably a deference to the delicacy and sensibilities of the free woman. The brand draws a charismatic gulf between the Gorian free woman, secure in her arrogance, beauty, and caste rights, and the stripped, nameless, rightless slaves, suitably vended as a more lovely beast, as they are in the flesh marts of the primitive, gorgeous worlds. Unbranded women, of course, may be sold privately, for example, as fresh captives, or to say men who speculate they might find them of interest. Savages of gore. Waiting for answer. As on Earth, on Earth, if a woman's Jewish, the mother's Jewish, the child's automatically presumed Jewish. If the man is Jewish, man is not Jewish, then if the mother's not Jewish, then you're not. It's determined by the mother, not through the lineage is passed on through the mother. So that's a way to determine whether a woman, whether a child's born a slave, if the mother's not a slave. Which is why some slaves are freed prior to giving birth, if the free man wishes a free baby. So basically, a lot of free do that. He frees the slave, baby's born, then he puts her back into slavery. So there's some tricks that are played in the merchant side in order to do this. A child is born a slave, even if a child is conceived to a free man. Free men wishing to have free children born to slave girls is said to be temporary freedom for the time of childbirth. There are exceptions, of course, with the most rules. The city of Varna, for example, in the post-revolutionary period modified its slave laws so the slave girls may give birth to a free person as long as they are free at the time of conception. This, of course, makes the temporary freedom much shorter in vagabonds and gores where this is brought up. Naturally, other ways to become a slave, face stripping of a free woman makes a woman a slave. In others, they practice upon it's frowned upon and very difficult, needing approval of a magistrate. And this one's interesting. In the North, the way someone becomes a slave is stepping into a bond circle and proclaiming herself one. So it's a whole different process in the North. She just goes into the bond circle and says, I'm a slave. Now, what's interesting is, and this is a side note, a slave can be owned, however briefly, by a rescuer in the event of attack on the city. So if somebody rescues a slave during an attack, he can claim her. And the legal point, I think, is interesting. Sometime in the fall of cities, girls who have been enslaved, formerly and now Victoria's City, will be freed. Technically, according to merchant law, which serves the arbitrator in such intermunicipal matters, the girl becomes briefly the property of the rescuers. How else could they be freed? Further, according to merchant law, the rescuer has no obligation to free the girl. Having been enslaved, she lost all claims to her former homestead. Now, what I'm giving her is systematically having to examine key pieces of the law. She needs to go through and study it more. If you go to the city of Varn and you're listening to this particular recording, if you go to the city of Varn, there's a library in there that has all this material, all the laws. It's toward the back in the middle, between where the desks are and the front. You'll find the scrolls dealing with this particular area. The bare feet is key. Bare feet, the way you recognize a slave would be by brand, by collar, bare feet. Merchant law recommends you marking your property. However, it does not require it. Some civil law does. And now the quotes. Some fellows do not brand their slaves. I said, that's stupid, she said. It's contrary to the laws of most cities. I said, and the merchant law as well. Most female slaves on board, indeed the vast majority, almost all, needless to say, are branded, aside from questions of legality, compliance with the law, and such things will be clear upon moment's reflection. The various practical considerations are also commend slave branding to the attention of the owner. For in particular, the identification of the article of property tends to secure it, protecting it against its loss, facilitating its recovery, and so on. The main legal purpose of the brand, incidentally, is doubtless the identification of slaves. To be sure, most guardians of the brand also serves the psychological and aesthetic purposes for helping the girl understand she's now a slave. Yeah, there's one more that she missed, and we're going to deal with that right now. Actually, she missed two of them, bare feet and pierced ears. This lady did not see coming, so we're going to deal with that next. Pierced ears is a sign of slavery, although not all women with pierced ears are slaves. You would know that such a woman was once a slave and so marked. And let me show you the quote for this. A girl with pierced ears, of course, either a slave or a former slave. If she's a former slave, her papers are mass mucin and best be in perfect order. More than one freed woman, because of pierced ears, has found themselves again on the block, again reduced by strong men to the helpless state of bondage. Now that one, make sure your city's going to back that, because pierced ears is a problem. Some of the people are Canucks are going to claim that it's normal to have it pierced eared. I know a woman in Thermos who came back as a free but used the same body. She was captured over and over. Should either get the needed paperwork or use a different body, because that girl kept getting captured literally weekly because everybody knew she was a freaking slave. Slave would be living dangerous. She attempted to wear the clothing of free women, though there are some exceptions allowing veils on some slaves. However, free men would generally question a girl appears to be a slave but wearing the garment of a free. Now, this one's interesting. Some cities say that they only have to have the papers on them for a year. Yeah, let's read this out loud for those who are doing that. I got in trouble for saying it mentions it's a capital offense for free women, for slaves addresses free women. And then I told her meaning death penalty. I got into trouble saying that it's a felony. The man, by a man that considered himself a great magistrate. Here's the deal: all capital offenses are felonies. Not all felonies are capital offenses. He then told me the felonies are not mentioned in the books. He's wrong. So felonies are mentioned inside the book, and if it's a capital offense, it's automatically a felony. Go put that in my notes here because I think that that part's important. That happened recently to me, and go put that into my notes for later's. What did I learn about the man that tried to get me fired because he said there are no felonies in the book and that When somebody makes a statement like there is no such thing as 133 laws of Gore, which has been taught for ages by magistrate trainees as a way of labeling the law so you can quickly reference law number 5, law number 3, or that felonies are not, that capital punishments are not felonies. The man's not trained. So I didn't argue, but the fact that I was corrected on that and the man did what he did, I learned right away he didn't have proper training. Let me get her the notes. All right. Okay. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great time. My next tape's going to be on the civil law. Next week will be civil law. Basically, we're going to go through, look at the practical application of it, and appreciate your time. I hope this was useful.